Hi everyone, today I wanted to share some of our favorite flowers that are great for pollinators. All the ones that I'm talking about today are really easy to grow from seed, and I tried to cover a variety of flowers that will give you flowers throughout different seasons and also attract different kinds of pollinators as well. The first flower is probably not going to be a surprise to anyone, but that is sunflowers. I think everybody grows sunflowers in their garden, and if you don't, you really should because they're amazing for the bees and also for the birds. Sunflowers bloom throughout the summer, and once they start blooming, those bees will be on them 24/7. The pads are nice and big and are full of pollen so that the bees can land easily on them, and we often see multiple bees at the same time on each flower. Sunflowers do really well direct sown into the garden and come in so many different colors and varieties. We really love this beautiful evening sun variety. Autumn Beauty is also a really nice one. And in our vegetable garden, we like to plant these branching varieties so that we get lots of different heads of sunflowers throughout the summer. As those sunflower heads dry up and the seeds develop, we get a lot of birds coming to feast on those seeds. So these are kind of like a 2-for-1 kind of flower because they provide food for different kinds of garden critters. Sunflowers are annuals, but because those birds eat those seeds, they tend to scatter the seeds throughout your garden, and you'll often get volunteers in future years. Number 2 is probably my personal favorite, and that's Echinacea, also known as coneflower. The most common variety is this pink-purple one that I'm showing you here, but they also come in a white, which we have in our front garden, and I think that one's really beautiful. And they also have mixes of more colorful ones that we don't have in our garden yet. Echinacea starts blooming in the early summer, and it continues all throughout the season until you get your first frost. It is probably the most carefree flower in our garden because it's a perennial, so it does come back year after year and we don't have to do anything. And it's also very drought tolerant, so I never water these plants and they do just fine. And so many different kinds of pollinators love these flowers. I've seen bees on them, butterflies, moths, and later in the season, the goldfinches love to eat those seed heads as well. Just like those sunflowers, the birds will eat those seeds and scatter them around your garden. So even if you start with just one plant, you'll probably start finding this all over your garden. And I'm really happy about that just because there's such a great splash of color anywhere. Flower number 3 is borage, and this is pretty common in urban vegetable gardens because the flowers actually are edible. They kind of taste like cucumbers, and they're just such a pretty blue color. For us, our borage started blooming in about late spring, and now the plant has gotten really big and bushy and is covered with so many flowers, and there are just bees around this all the time. We actually have this one area right to the side of our raised bed vegetable garden that has all of these first 3 flowers, and throughout the day, if you visit this area, it is just swarming with bees and butterflies, and there's just always so much activity here, and that's really great to have, especially around our vegetable garden, just to make sure we can get really good pollination on all of our food crops. The 4th flower is Dahlias, and this year was our first time growing them. There are so many varieties of Dahlias that you can grow from tubers, but those can be pretty pricey, so I chose to grow ours from seed, which is way cheaper. And although you can't guarantee what your dahlia is going to look like if you grow it from seed, and a lot of times you won't get those really fluffy, fully double ones that you would get from a stock plant, I found them incredibly easy to grow, and all the ones that I grew from seed are doing really well. And I actually think it's really fun to have to wait and see what each plant is going to look like when it flowers. Dahlias are another one of those great flowers that once it starts blooming in the early summer, it won't stop until the first frost, which means that you get a really good long season of blooms. And ever since ours have started blooming, I've noticed that the bees have really flocked to them. A lot of times we even find them sleeping on the flowers overnight, which I think is really funny. The 5th flower is another very popular one, and it's the zinnia. This is another one that's super easy to grow from seed, and this one really likes the heat, so it's great to grow in the summer, and it will just keep on blooming if you keep deadheading those flowers. There are so many different kinds and colors of zinnias, but I specifically want to talk about these red ones that we grew last year because red flowers are really attractive to hummingbirds. And even though hummingbirds typically prefer tubular flowers where they can get their beaks in, I noticed that they really liked these red zinnias as well. So I think this is a great one if you're looking to attract more hummingbirds to your garden. The sixth flower is technically an herb, and that's dill. I think this is a really great one to grow because it does really well in cooler weather, so it's one of those things that you can plant early on in the spring when you don't have a lot of other stuff going on. When dill flowers in the late spring, it forms these really big pads of tiny little flowers that are great for your smaller pollinators, but really the main reason I wanted to include it on this list is that we noticed that during the spring we had swallowtail caterpillars that really loved munching on this dill, and I think it's important to have food for them early on in the season because without these caterpillars you won't get the butterflies. So that's pretty much it for this short list of flowers that will be great for pollinators. This is by no means a comprehensive list, but it's just some of our favorites that we found have done really well for us. But I really think that you don't have to stick to particular kinds of flowers to attract pollinators. Just grow whatever works the best for you, and having any kind of flower is better than having none. You could also grow things like flowering herbs, those would also be really great, and you'll also get double use out of that space because you can use the herb as well. But anyway, I do hope that this video gave you some inspiration if you're looking for some new flowers to include in your garden. Let me know if I missed any of your favorite flowers for pollinators in the comments down below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again in the next video.